My name is Craig Schuster. I'm founder of Remit DAO. I wanted to talk a little bit today um, about some of the most pressing issues and some of the best ways we can deliver social impact in the Web3 space. First, I kind of wanted to show you this photo. This is a photo, obviously, of astronauts looking back on Earth. The reason why I'm showing this photo is because I want to begin by thinking on a grand scale. I want you for a moment to forget the typical activities of your day, the normal routine that you've been in, and for a moment, think big, think huge, think on a grand scale. That's kind of what astronauts look at when they look at the Earth. They're looking back at their life. They're looking back at everything they've known, every emotion they've felt, every person they've seen, every feeling, every page in every history book that's ever been written is right there in that pale blue dot. And that's kind of where I want to begin. Because when we talk about having empathy, empathy is a 21st century skill, right? Empathy is something that has ignited with the advent of the internet, right? Before the advent of the internet, the the empathy you would have would be for, whoever was in your backyard, right? Whoever was the closest to you. But now with the internet, we can now actually have empathy for people we've never met before, people all over the world. We can have empathy for the world itself. I mean, the environmental movement began in 1970, which was right after the Apollo missions. And I think that when people were able to look back at the Earth, they felt a new sense of empathy. It's like a part of our brain is growing. And this is very important when it comes to social impact. Okay. Now, I want to get a little bit more narrow here. I'd like everyone in the room to think for a moment back in your past, the moment you first learned about blockchain technology, the first time you learned about digital currencies, it was probably Bitcoin, to be honest. Now, when you heard about this, when you learned about this new technology, I mean, what was the point? What's the point of digital currency? What was its purpose? At first, I learned it was to send the equivalent of money around the globe, anywhere, without an intermediary, without a bank, at near lightning speed and at very low cost, permissionless. So when you think about this, it's like, wow, who could use this technology? I think the answer is almost everyone. Almost everyone could use it. But the real question to ask is who could benefit from this technology the most? Who is in desperate need of this technology? Who could use it? Who is sending money internationally at a regular interval and still trapped in an archaic system? Now, I think the answer to that, for me, is obvious. It would be migrant workers and refugees, which are also migrants, because these are the people who send remittances. These are remittances. Like I said, I'm founder of a DAO. I guess I didn't say that. I'm founder of Remit DAO. As you can tell from the name, we're focused on international remittance payments to developing nations from migrant workers who are unbanked or undocumented, which are the majority of them. So before I begin, I want to talk a little bit about myself, to why I care about this subject, why I'm passionate about it, and the vision I have. So before I begin, I'm a teacher. My name is Craig, and I have been teaching for the last 9.5 years in Hong Kong. I absolutely love Hong Kong. I love teaching. I would still be in Hong Kong right now if it weren't for COVID. But COVID kind of ruined my life there, actually, when it happened. But like I said, I loved living in Hong Kong. I absolutely loved the culture there. But when COVID happened, I was actually visiting my family back here in the United States, and I remember watching the news and thinking, "Wow, this COVID is, the lockdowns are happening, international flights are over, and Hong Kong is not accepting anyone besides permanent residents, which I am not." And thinking, "Oh, this will be over soon. I'll be able to get back there within no time." But of course, that didn't happen. and everything was out of reach. My apartment, my tiny little flat there, my all my stuff, my friends, my students, and most importantly, my bank account. So all the money I had been saving over the last 7 or 8 years was stored in a Chinese bank. And because I thought I was going to be coming back to Hong Kong, I didn't withdraw it before I left. That was a big problem because now I needed my money and I wanted to spend it. I wanted to use it. Well, I'm a customer of these banks, right? I have a bank, a little town, hometown US bank here in middle America, Midwestern America, and I have this Chinese bank. Well, I'm customers of them, so I can get my money easily, right? No, no, not right. I encountered so many problems trying to do a bank transfer because these banks wanted nothing to do with each other. They weren't partnered with each other. Not to mention transferring from a foreign currency to my little bank that had no idea, had no reserves. I would be paying about 25% in fees for my life savings or for the savings I had in Hong Kong, which was, a large amount. 25% of your income gone, your savings gone, just to have it. I thought this is ridiculous. There's got to be a better way. And I should know at this time, I had never practiced digital currency. It wasn't, I knew about it, but it was just nothing I practiced. I was a teacher. And that's, I tried other apps like, what other apps are they, like Western Union type payment services. And they were a bit better, but still not worth it. So when my friend told me about, ERC20 tokens and said, this is what they're used for, I was like, wow, this is a new technology. I used it and I never looked back. I was just like, wow, this is something that I can use. It has utility. Before that, I thought, well, digital currency and crypto, this is just for investors, right? This is just for people trying to make a buck. And I don't know enough about that. So why should I participate? But that's not true. There is utility here. So that's the reason I'm here. That's the reason I am here right now, is because of the utility that I receive from digital currency, from crypto. It was at that moment I realized that this is a technology I need to dive into. And being a teacher, I'm a lifelong learner. So I spent the next 2.5 years learning everything I could about this from early 2020. Now I work for Consensus Software. So it's kind of my job now, kind of my work. But I still teach my students in Hong Kong. So I still need it. I still earn money in Hong Kong, and I still need to send it back via ERC20 tokens, via an exchange. So that's why I'm here. Okay, that's one part of it. But I want to stay on the topic of Hong Kong for just a moment because it's a vital piece of my message. Like I said, I loved living in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a city the size, population-wise, the size of New York City. And I had a lot of experience in Hong Kong working alongside migrant workers. And the reason is this. First of all, 10% of the working population in Hong Kong are migrant workers. Similar numbers in Singapore as well, and even higher numbers in other countries like Saudi Arabia, for example. But anyway, in Hong Kong, it's a very close-knit city. Everything is kind of packed close together. If you've ever been there, you understand this. And the migrant workers who live there, almost all of them have exactly the same job, and that is domestic worker, domestic helper. Essentially, the migrant worker is hired by a family to live in their little flat, and do all the cooking, the cleaning, the child rearing, the elderly care, basically all the housework and child care is their responsibility. They don't have a house, they don't have a room of their own. Typically, they usually sleep on a sofa or the floor. They have no privacy whatsoever. And they make about 500-600 US dollars a month in salary. And that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not. But it also, they're they're from the Philippines, they're from Indonesia, they're from developing countries where that money will go much further than it will for us in developed countries. Like I said, they all have the same job, right? They're on duty 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. There's a law in Hong Kong that says that they must have 1 day off a week, otherwise they get worked to the bone. And that 1 day off a week almost always falls on Sunday. It's almost always on Sunday. So if you ever visit Hong Kong on a Sunday, specifically in the major districts like Central, Causeway Bay, Wan Chai, these major business districts and financial centers, the city explodes. The city absolutely explodes. Every sidewalk, every pedestrian walkway, every city park is covered in cardboard boxes with migrant workers relaxing on them. Because think about it, this is their 1 day off. Are they going to stay at home with the family who hires them? It's like their boss. Are they going to stay at home on their 1 day off? No. But where are they going to go? They don't make enough money to buy a hotel, so they have to have some place to go, and that place is the streets. So, like I said, every city park, pedestrian walkway, these places are filled with migrant workers. Some of them, like the Filipinos, for example, they're having church mass on the street. They're very Catholic. Indonesians also, they talk with each other. They Zoom their family back home that they can't see. And the most popular thing I see them doing is, well, sleeping. But besides that, is standing in line at Western Union to send what little money they earn back home to their families as a lifeline for their survival and their family who they can't see. As you know, hopefully, migrant workers, they choose to be migrant workers because there is no opportunity in their country for them and they have a family to support. So they voluntarily leave their family in order to work in near slave-like conditions to earn $500 or $600 a month overseas. And they send almost all of it back home to their families on a regular basis. Majority of them are unbanked or even undocumented. So if they're unbanked, if they don't have a bank, they don't have a lot of options. Typically, it's Western Union or MoneyGram. The scale is right in your face every day in Hong Kong. After all, everything in Hong Kong is close together. And it's nowhere is it more prevalent, like I said, than on Sundays. I always wondered, why are they doing this? Why are they spending their time standing outside in a Western Union when I lived there? But now it really makes more sense to me. Now, I worked there, as I said, as a teacher and specifically as a private tutor. So as a tutor, I would actually visit my students' homes. I'd visit their flat to teach lessons in their home privately. At this time, this is when I had my contact with migrant workers because they're the ones taking care of the kids, like I mentioned. They're the ones who I would interact with. They're the ones who would pay me. Oftentimes, I would never even meet the mom or dad for years and years. And so I would witness it. I would witness this and I would feel, I would have a relationship with them. This is why I feel so passionate about this. This is this is why I believe that we can really make a difference and make an impact here, especially through education. Like I said, I'm a teacher, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. Before I do, I want to ask if anyone has any questions or any comments. Please speak up.
Hi, Craig. It's Sangeeta here.
Hi.
Um, Thanks. It's great listening to you. I'm just sorry that I came in just a few minutes after you started. Could you just give me a little bit of background, just the first 3 or 4 minutes that you spoke that maybe I missed, so that I can quickly catch up?
Sure. Well, I wanted to kind of introduce myself.
Hmm.
Like I said, my name is Craig. I founded Remit DAO. As you can tell by the name, it's a DAO focused on remittance payments, international remittance payments, specifically from from people groups in developing countries or migrant workers in host cities that are sending remittances on a daily basis back home to their families and specifically people who are these migrant workers who are unbanked or undocumented.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, and at the beginning, I kind of opened on a broad scale. I think I saw you in the room at that point. So
I was just finishing up a meeting,
oh,
so
okay.
I didn't want to miss this session, but at the same time I couldn't just come in, and I was literally just finishing off that meeting. So
Okay,
thanks for the
good.
catch up.
And we are recording, so I will be able to relay this video to you so you can catch that.
Great. Thanks, Craig.
Okay, thank you for speaking up. I don't want to be the only one speaking here. I could literally speak all day about this. I'm a teacher, you know? I'm a teacher. Okay, so next what I want to do is I want to think back in time before before we had the tools and technology that we do today. When Ethereum and Bitcoin, when these things were still new, there was a really good use case for them. And that use case is kind of what I'm getting at, which is allowing unbanked or undocumented people to participate in international finance with on their own terms, right? On their own terms, without need of a bank, without need of a bank. And when that was proposed years ago, everyone kind of said, "Yeah, wow, it's great. That's a great use case scenario." But at the time, we're talking like what, 2013, 2012. At the time, the tools that would be able to enable them to do that weren't around. That's why it was a kind of a use case scenario. But it is, in my opinion, that living in 2022 and almost 2023 today, that we have these tools, the tools we need to be able to send international remittances or international payments across overseas, across borders, without a bank, without documentation, is possible now. But why isn't no one doing anything? Why aren't we thinking about that? I think it's because the Web3 world has kind of got caught up in what's cutting edge, what's new. Like, let's invent the next tool. Let's invent the next, let's create the community around something new. Everyone wants to stay on the cutting edge, but it's like everyone's forgotten about this use case scenario. I want to quote Joseph Lubin for a moment. Joe Lubin is a co-founder of Ethereum. He's also CEO of the company I work for, Consensus. This is a quote from him at the Ethereal Summit in 2017. He says, quote, "An excess of 2 billion people don't have banking relationships, and similar numbers don't have a state-issued ID. So while they may be able to transact in their local context, this renders them non-citizens in the larger regional and global economies." End quote. When I heard that, I was like, wow, this is exactly what we're trying to do. Now, sadly, that was in 2017. Sadly, today the number is much larger than 2 billion. I would estimate, it's hard to estimate because we're talking about undocumented people here, but I would estimate it to be more like 2.5 billion. That's, if you think about the world population is at what, 7 billion, that's a huge, huge portion of the population. And I would say the vast majority of them are located in the Southeast Asia region. After all, within a 6-hour plane flight from Hong Kong, you can reach half the world's population. It's another reason I love Hong Kong. It's so centrally located. Everything in Southeast Asia rolls through there. So we're talking about a very high concentration of migrant workers concentrated in a very, very small area, especially in these mega cities like Hong Kong and Singapore. Now, so that's where Remit DAO, my DAO, is focused currently. We are currently interviewing migrants from Indonesia and Philippines. These are just ones who I know, who I've stayed in contact with, to ask questions. You know, we're not at the stage where we're trying to teach anything yet. We're asking questions because there's no more information that's more valuable than from the natives, than from the locals. We want to get their perspective. We're also coordinating with local NGOs and nonprofit organizations who already look out for migrant rights. Typically, they're looking out for abuse, neglect, housing. They help with transportation. They help migrants in a variety of areas. But the one place they fall short on is remittance. They don't want to be involved with their finances at all. Because after all, we have Western Union, and Western Union is deeply, deeply ingrained into the societies in these developing countries. I mean, my stepmom is from Manila. I've been to the Philippines quite often. Western Union is prevalent there. It is part of their culture. It's deeply ingrained. I mean, it's 170 years old. We're talking about a very old technology and kind of archaic, in my opinion. But so that's what we're doing right now. We're coordinating, we're interviewing the migrant workers to get their perspective, coordinating with NGOs and nonprofits who look out for migrant rights. I'd like to mention here that I am traveling to Singapore November 28th for 3 weeks, and I will be also visiting Hong Kong during that time. And during this time, this is when I will be meeting with these NGOs, who some of them I've already set up um, a time a tentative time and date to meet with them, and there's also other things like friends of mine who have jobs that are related to migrants, and there's a migrant museum located in Singapore for migrants by migrants. And this is all opportunities for me to create content for my DAO. So I'm really looking forward to that. I can talk more about that later. Um, any questions on that before I continue? Okay. And so Remit DAO, on my DAO, there are migrants all over the world, but we're really focused on the Southeast Asia region for now because we're small, we're new, we're very new, we're like a baby DAO. We've been around for about 5 months, and we haven't launched yet, so we don't yet have uh, our voting mechanisms or our multi-sig wallets yet. We're still building community. Although this is really the chance when we need to get our message out because we're focused on our mission. That's the only thing that matters. So we're establishing values. These values guide our decision making, and our mission is number one. So let me talk a little bit more about this. Let's see. About the remittance options for migrant workers. Migrant workers send remittances on a regular basis to their families back home as a lifeline for survival. And is it any surprise that they pay higher fees and have longer wait times than their privileged counterparts? I I don't think that's a surprise. I mean, they often work in slave labor conditions, and without a bank, they're forced to use archaic remittance providers like Western Union. And Western Union is what, like I said, 170 years old. This is an outdated service. They're brick and mortar stores. They're closed on the weekends. They're closed outside of normal business hours. They're closed on holidays. And the worst part of all is they're closed, obviously, during natural disasters. Philippines, for example, gets hammered by typhoons at least once or twice a year. And the people who are unbanked, which over half of the population of Philippines are unbanked, if you don't have a bank, you won't be able to get insurance. If you don't have insurance, when a typhoon strikes and your home is destroyed, you need money desperately. You need money desperately. And do you think the Western Union will be open after a typhoon? I doubt it. You know, if the Western Union is still standing, it's just there's so many problems when migrant or not when families need their money the most. Western Union will not be there. But I will say one thing: Western Union is like the best of the worst. That means, sadly, Western Union has lots of competition from other payment service providers that are actually much worse than them. They're predatory remittance providers who prey on migrant workers. Because let's be honest, migrant workers are vastly uneducated. They often grow up in isolated villages or isolated towns away from society. And in times like this, they're desperate. That is a perfect target for a scam artist, a scammer. It's a perfect target for a predatory payment service provider to get them to sign a document that they can't even read and take advantage of them as much as possible. You know, so the problem is very real for them. But they're used to being ignored. They're used to being brushed to the side of the financial discourse. They're used to being forgotten about, so they don't have a voice. They don't have a voice. So As you can see, there is a huge problem. The question is, how do we change this, right? So the issue with migrant workers and the issue with really, I hate to say slavery, but modern day slavery as defined by Amnesty International. Um, this is a societal problem. This is a problem in society. I mean, these countries that depend on these migrant workers, they would collapse if if there were no migrants. So they're really holding up the world's in many ways the world's economy. There are many social problems in the world or societal problems in the world, but the problem is the only way to improve societal issues is by changing society itself. We're talking about changing the culture. And that solution is not very sought after because it's not immediate. If you want to change society, it's going to take a long time to do that. It's small steps, it's baby steps. The only way to improve society or only to change society's problems is by changing society itself. It takes time, so it's easy to lose sight of, and it's not glamorous either. I mean, governments can make laws to affect society, which is like a synthetic way to affect society, affect culture, but that often backfires. So I believe the solution to this societal problem is education. Remember, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 9.5 years. It's a passion of mine. And as I said earlier, if you remember, I was locked out of my bank account. I needed my money from overseas, from halfway around the world. And even with banks, I still was not able to do it. So this is another passion of mine, which is financial empowerment, financial inclusion, and financial literacy. 21st century financial literacy. That's what I think this is. So the goal of Remit DAO here is not to reinvent the wheel. Like when I first had this idea, I thought, well, we can make an app, we can make a new digital tool to do this, but why? It is my belief that the tools are already here. There are many tools. There are many digital tools that can facilitate this. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Instead, if we actually provided remittance pay, so okay, think about this. If we actually provided the remittance payments, that would be expensive, it would be costly, it'd take a long time, and I could be arrested for something for in a third world country. I don't want that to happen. So instead, we take an unbiased approach, completely nonpartisan approach, and we take an outreach approach. We are an outreach DAO. We're also an education DAO, but it's specifically an outreach DAO. Our goal is to host workshops in host cities that host high concentrations of migrant workers, Hong Kong and Singapore among them, where these are free workshops. And I want to be the teacher, but eventually, okay, we'll get there later. Let me describe these workshops. The workshops are free, where migrant workers can come in risk-free to learn about the digital tools, the digital remittance tools they can use to build wealth in their family, because we're talking about building wealth. If they're saved, they're with Western Union, they're paying what, 7, 8, 9, 10% in fees. A digital remittance service would be a small, tiny fraction of that, and it would be instant. So since they use these remittance services on a regular basis, this is building wealth. So we're talking about building wealth. In these workshops, we would look at the individual needs. Okay, this is not a one-size-fits-all program here. We look at the individual needs, where they're sending money from, where they're sending it to, what else are their needs. And with that information, we would be able to demonstrate a tool to use for them right then and there. For example, if it was, if we realized the best tool to use was, let's just say PayPal. Just for example, we figure out it's PayPal. They've never used it before. They're going from using Western Union for generations to a digital remittance service. That's a big jump. Okay, so we're taking baby steps here. We're talking about adults who are very uneducated, and they just want one thing, and that is for their family to receive the money and be able to spend it. They're not interested in any of the bells and whistles. We want an app that is completely user friendly for them and secure. So once we found that app, once we've established which one that works best for them, that's when we practice it. The best way for them to learn is not through marketing campaigns. It's not through a website that we send them. It's from face-to-face work experience, face-to-face practice. So we would have, so let's say $5 worth that we would be, once they download the app, we'd send it to them. So they're practicing receiving remittances. They could send it back to us, send it to their friends, send it back and forth, just so they can actually experience it and go through the motions to become familiar with these tools. And if their family has the same app, or if they tell their family to download it, they could make a digital remittance payment right then and there. And I think we would see results pretty quickly, very quickly. So that is the idea of these workshops, establishing familiarity with them on these digital tools. Does anyone have a comment before I continue or question? Okay. So we're giving an invaluable resource, not only building wealth, but also time. I mean, on Western Union's website, it literally says international money transfers are completed in 1 to 5 business days, but this could be delayed. Of course, these numbers aren't universal, and how long a money transfer takes ultimately depends on several factors. You know, the only thing that Western Union has is trust. That's the only thing they really have. And they also have an off-ramp solution that we don't have, but more on that very soon. And before I go on, I want to talk about rewards in this program and how to make it sustainable. Because let's be honest, I can't visit Singapore every week to teach remittance workshops. I'd love to do it. I would like to do it. I want to get the ball rolling. I want to be the one doing it. But to make it sustainable, we need and we rely on the help of the native population, the migrants themselves and their social groups, their support groups. So eventually, we're going to be teaching them how to teach these workshops. The migrant workers who are the most engaged, who are participate the most, and would be able to fulfill the role of instructor, be able to be the ones hosting these workshops and being the support group, which would be great because they speak the local language, they have the social networks, and they know the culture better than anyone else. I could live there my entire life and I'll never know the culture as well as any of them do. So in order to have them do this, in order for this to happen, we need to reward them, right? And we can reward them in many ways, not only with governance tokens, which I think they should absolutely have. They should have say in the decisions of RemitDAO. Reward tokens, of course, but the most creative way I've found to reward them is with more education. It's important to note that in Asian cultures, education is very, very highly valued and sought after, perhaps more than anything else. So when you reward someone with more education, I think it would be it would have a warm welcome. But migrant workers are not necessarily interested in taking a new course in Web3. But because they are migrant workers, 99% of the time, they have children growing up thousands of miles away who are growing up without a mother or a father or both. They often live in small, isolated villages where education is weak at best, and they don't have opportunities. I mean, after all, their parents and probably grandparents were migrant workers, and if they grow up, that's what they're looking at too. They're not their professional opportunity is very limited. That's why the reward we give to the people, the migrant workers who are the most engaged and participate the most and teach and be the support groups for these workshops, their children back home are automatically enrolled, not automatically, but they're enrolled in Web3 skill building courses. These are designed to break the cycle of poverty and get those children on a mission, on a pathway to, once they reach the 18, 19 years old, once they reach the professional age where they're entering the job market, they would have Web3 skills. We're talking about coding, design, blockchain essentials, and they can learn this from the comfort of their own home. So this is what I imagine is, let's teach these are kids. We're talking about kids, and I've taught kids for 9.5 years. I know the best way to get them interested. The best way to get them interested, I would say, in a coding course is let's make your own video game. Like, what kid would not want to be able to make their own video game, create their own video game? This is coding. These are fundamental skills of computer language and eventually Web3. The problem is they're in a small isolated village. So in theory, this is all theoretical for this point, we're even budgeting for a laptop to send to them so that they can access it, because they probably don't have a laptop. A laptop specifically designed for these courses that could last years. These are courses that could last years. These are online courses, though, specifically, because I'm not traveling to a small isolated village to teach one or two kids. They can learn these online and in groups, online groups. So we're giving them the laptop. All they need is a Wi-Fi connection, and they can be the Web3 leaders of tomorrow. Like how happy I'm going to be years after seeing these kids grow up and actually enter the job market and actually be able to work professionally. And it doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter where they're from or where they live. Before, it mattered where you live. If you lived in a small isolated village in Indonesia, then, your options are very low. But with Web3 and, really just digital professionalism, I think there are tons of opportunities to work from home. There are tons of opportunities to build these skills from the comfort of their own home. All they need is an internet connection. So that is one. That's a reward, right? We're not giving away laptops to every kid. We're giving it to the children of the migrant workers who are continuing and making our mission sustainable. This is just one of the creative ways to reward that we've thought of, but I love to reward with more education. And there's nowhere in the world who would appreciate that more than in Asian cultures. So yeah, so before I get to our mission, I'm gonna take a break. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Let me check. You can always chat too. If you guys want, you can always ask a question in the chat, and I will answer it when I take a break here. Okay, so I'm almost finished. We've already established the problem, and I've already told you my solution to the problem. The solution is maybe not glamorous. It's not immediate. Okay, this is a solution through education. Education is the only way we'll see mass adoption. Education is the only way we'll see change to happen, actual change to happen. Because migrant workers, they have little motivation to change what they're already doing. We could have a marketing campaign. We could have an education through the internet, right? We can make a website where they could come and learn, and you could send it to them and get it in their phones, and they'd say, wow, okay. Anyway, they're like, oh, that's nice. These are adults we're talking about. They need face-to-face education. It needs to be face-to-face. Nothing can replace that. Is face-to-face experience. Once they've actually tried, experienced it, and become familiar with these apps, and the social networks begin to grow, the support group is a social network. The support group for migrant workers in certain regions, it would really be building a culture. We're building our own culture. We're changing society, but it's the slow way, right? This is through education. Okay, our mission. So this is the mission statement I wrote. Our mission is to educate migrant worker families and refugees. Refugees are also migrants. So includes refugees and migrant workers. Let's say it again. To educate migrant worker families and refugees about the benefits, safety, and logistics of digital remittance tools. RemitDAO aims to unlock the barrier of marginalized people face. It's lack of education and familiarity with the digital remittance tools that we already have, that are already here. These tools can build family wealth, save time and money with each transaction. RemitDAO will organize education sessions, develop relations with local groups, I talked about that earlier, who are protecting migrant workers and refugees, and establish a culture within society to grow by teaching others, right? Teachers become teachers. Teachers teach teachers how to teach, and this grows. So our goals are basically, like I said, to provide education in developing countries and host cities, specifically Hong Kong and Singapore, for methods that enable international remittance payments to loved ones at a fraction of the cost, to familiarize local residents on the alternatives to traditional methods. Also, there will be marketing. Marketing will be a big part of it, I think. And like I said, create social networks who can be relied upon for each other for troubleshooting when problems arise. And even once we have a treasury and once we actually get some grants and get funding, I don't think we're going to need a lot. I mean, we're an education service. You know, what are our funding? We're not going to need, $250,000 to get this started. We can get started already. And what I really want to do is have an insurance set aside in our treasury to protect victims of fraud, to protect victims of scams. Because let's be honest, this is changing the narrative. I want to change the narrative of digital currency right now. I mean, right now we're in a bear market, and let's think about the overall the dialogue that's happening. There's plenty of, like what said, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's being enthralled, and I feel like the the conversation right now on a global scale, or at least in America, where I am, is crypto is either one of three things. It's either Wall Street executives profiting off the middle class and, lighting cigars with $100 bills and, making more and more money on top of money, and they're rich. And that's what crypto is. That's one. Two is like these little teenage moon boys and shit coins that are spending their life savings on something obscene or some NFTs and just absurdity. And then the third one, I would say would be, using digital currency and crypto to move dirty money around, right? To scam people and hide transactions. Those are the three things. Those are the three conversations, I think, or the narratives about digital currency. Well, why? Why can't we establish a digital currency for social good, public goods, like an education service like this? Why can't we have a conversation about the utility that it serves, the people who it helps? Because to me, digital currency is about utility. If it doesn't have a use case, to me, it's not my thing. So why aren't we creating a dialogue about the impact that it has on the poorest of the poor? Right? In my mind, migrant workers and refugees are the poorest of the poor. They need it most. They need to send remittances on a regular basis. So that's the conversation I want to start. That's the dialogue I want people to have, is that digital currency and the people working in Web3 are here to make it a better place. We're not just here to make money over money, So I want to get so now I want to give you guys I want to show you an example of an NGO, a nonprofit who I'm coordinating with in Singapore. Before I do that, one last chance. Oh, I see. There's a thank you in the chat. If anyone else has anything to say, I will show you anything. Any comments or questions, real fast. I'll be quiet. Okay, so here is the first NGO. This is an NGO or like a nonprofit in Singapore. Can everyone see my screen? I think they can. So it's called HOME. HOME stands for Humanitarian Organization for Migration Economics. Um, and they're not alone. This is not a unique organization. There are lots of advocacy groups that are here to support and empower migrant workers, but these fall short of remittances, every single one. They're here to advocate for them. They're here to give them proper food and water and um, transportation. There's tons and tons of abuse and neglect in migrant communities. Many migrant workers would really be considered modern day slaves. Some of them have been tricked or coerced into signing a contract in, Saudi Arabia or, Dubai. I mean, look at Dubai. How many migrant workers live in Dubai? Thousands. And I saw a statistic that in Middle Eastern countries, 10,000 migrant workers die every year. And the vast majority of them are employment related. They're caused by employment or neglect or abuse. So there is a huge problem here, and these organizations, I think they're doing a lot of good. I think they're doing they are the change that I wish I could deliver to them. But the one way they fall short is with remittances. They do everything for them, but they stay out of their finances. And I can see why, right? I think it makes sense to me why they would. But, that's what we're here for. It is important, you know, paying 8, 9, 10% on every paycheck. It's like, imagine your salary, 10% of it is gone just so you and your family can have it. Now, there are bigger problems. We're kind of winding down to our time. There are bigger problems. In fact, the biggest roadblock for RemitDAO that I can see is off-ramp solutions. Did anyone think about this already? Did anyone think, wow, these remittance tools are great, Craig, but how are they going to get it into fiat? Because Asia is still a heavily fiat-based economy. And numbers on a screen, numbers on a digital screen really mean nothing to them. How can they either off-ramp it to fiat or spend either the digital tokens or the digital cash or fiat that they already have in this app? How can they spend it to pay rent and pay bills and buy food at the grocery store or fruit at the market or pay their friend back for something? That's a huge roadblock. And we've brainstormed solutions. And there are solutions, but we have not found a solution that is universal. We have not found a solution that will work for everyone. For example, Philippines is a huge, probably the biggest market for remittances, especially in Southeast Asia. In Philippines, there are a chain of pawn shops. There are pawn shops chains in different cities where anyone with any kind of digital currency can come into the pawn shop, send the pawn shop their either Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever the token is, and the pawn shop will give them the market price for it in fiat. That is a solution without a bank. The problem is the pawn shop is still going to charge fees, so there's still going to be fees associated with this. And pawn shops are not in they're in the major cities, but they're not in the small isolated villages that I was talking about earlier that many migrant workers come from. They come because they don't have opportunity. In bigger cities, there might be more opportunity for them. So typically migrant workers come from small isolated villages where this would not be a solution for them. So that's just one example of a solution. We've also thought about some kind of smart card where the solution would be the migrant workers would be paid from their employer directly, because their employer has a bank, so it would be directly sent onto some kind of a smart card that not only the migrant worker has, but also the family back home has. So there's really no need for a remittance here. Once the money gets on-ramped to this smart card, the family back home already has it. So the remittance is done. They don't even need to make a remittance. So that's fast and that's easy. But then we would need to have merchants or ATM, some kind of way for the families to either use this smart card to pay for things or to off ramp it into their local currency, which is in the Philippines, they have the Philippine peso. So that's our biggest roadblock. And that's what we're brainstorming right now. But we're not letting that stop us. We've got a long ways to go, and it won't be easy. I don't expect this to be easy. I don't expect to walk into developing countries or host countries and say, here you go, I have the solution for you. Here it is, just do this, and there you go, and good luck and good job. I don't want to do that. And the last thing I want to do is be some privileged jerk that walks into a country and tells people what to do. That's the last thing I want. And another thing I don't want to do is leave them. This is not the idea of here's the tool, here's how to use it, goodbye. Good luck, goodbye. We did our work. Our job here is done. That's not what's going to happen. We are the support group. We are the social group. We are the teachers. We are the teachers of what's needed most in regards to digital currency and remittance.